Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the April Philipstown Conservation Board meeting. I'm Andy Gower, the chairperson. And first order of business is old business, and that's Surprise Lake Camp. Do we have attendees here for Surprise Lake Camp?
Andy, I think Max was just going to give you an update.
Okay.
Yeah, essentially, I'm going to be doing a site visit once they've completed the installation of the deer fencing around the road restoration portion of the violation that we had issued in. That is underway, from what I believe, and we're waiting for correspondence back from them before I go out there. But everything seemed to be underway. Lysicatos was on site. I met with him. In the field to discuss the other portion of the project regarding the stream crossing, and he was fully aware of the mitigatory work that was being proposed there too, and it had been retained for that. So everything's moving forward there.
Okay. That sounds good. Okay. Anybody have any comments on Surprise Lake? Or can we move on? And Bob, were you able to connect with audio? It looks not. If we could work on that. So do we have applicants here for 711 La Shinju in Cold Spring?
Yes, we do. Just one moment. We have Blair and Brian, and also the homeowner, Terry.
So we were submitted revised plans that are showing wildlife passage friendly areas. Would somebody like to explain it to us in more detail, particularly what's being used? We see where it is delineated on the survey.
Yes, of course. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Would you like to share your screen, or it's not necessary?
I'd like to share my screen if I could. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. Go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to present again. I know we were here last time we had some discussion. And I have a very brief presentation I'd like to walk the board through, if it pleases you, about some of the background work we've done and how we came to the current proposed project. Is that okay if I have about 5 minutes to talk?
Yes, yes, please do.
Thank you so much. And I want to recognize that you all are on the board experts and, of course, and have dealt with deer fences many times before. So I don't mean to be too remedial with this presentation. I'll just go through some basic concepts as we go. So, this is the site, obviously, and I want to show you some of the background research we did for the project. Obviously, this is the pond, and then here's residence 1 and 2 here, and then J. Cox Road is off to the right, to the east. Here's the survey that we have, showing the water courses and the pond, the topography from Beatty and Watson. Thank you, Beatty and Watson. With this, we've done a tremendous amount of analysis. We went back as far as 1954 in aerial imagery, looking at credit to the Putnam County historian for these images, looking at how the land has changed over time and has evolved from what would have been more open meadow in many sections of the site to what is now almost completely forested. Tracking that forward through the 90s. And again, here you can see in the 90s, you start to get color imagery on the right-hand side. And then taking it forward to today, 2007, 2009, and all the way to 2016. We've also completed, along with Trillium, who you're familiar with Trillium invasive species management,
Yes,
a really a really comprehensive, we've had our biologists and their biologists look at the site and compile a complete species list of plants, well, complete as of the time of year that we did the census. Really a very interesting plant community and a lot to work with. We also, we sent our wetland ecologist out to do a wetland delineation on the property, a proper wetland delineation, which you see obviously includes the pond and Foundry Brook, but also has lands upstream towards Jaycox Road. There's a significant tributary. And we also found some small wetlands that we mapped closer to Fishkill Road up in this area, if you can see my cursor. And those all, of course, have the buffer zone around them. We've also looked at topography. On the left, we have contour lines, hard to see, but on the right, we did a steep slope analysis and a soil analysis of the property. This is all a foundation for the work that our client, Terry, the property owner, wants to do in the future. We looked at the watershed, concerned about, what types of flood pulses we would have and that type of thing. On the left here, you can see the full watershed according to USGS stream stats for the Foundry Brook. And on the right, you can see these dendritic forms more zoomed into the site of how water, according to the LiDAR topography, how water moves across the site. Not all of these are streams, these are just flow paths. We extrapolated from the stream stats report expected CFS and volume flows for Foundry Brook throughout this area. Stream stats is an approximation of stream flows, but a good one. So to be conservative, we looked at all these numbers and looked at how in different flood events we would see the brook rise and fall. Interesting stuff to look at. We also went so far as to build a site model for the project to collaborate this great team, to help with collaboration on our great team. This is a cardboard topographic model of particular relevance to this meeting. All the exposed corrugation that you can see in this image, that is the scaled mapped wetland of the property. We have Foundry Brook coming down through the center, and the pond here, the residence is on the left. This tributary I mentioned here with some really cool rock landforms in the upper area, give you kind of a bird's eye view of this model. In order to have the type of enclosure or deer exclosure that we would like, we do need to cross the brook. Now, this fence is the only thing in this model not to scale. You can see some wires kind of hastily strewn across the longitudinal line here. That's not to scale in height, but it is trying to make the point of like, this is one of the points in which we would cross the brook. So the context for this project, this is a project, a photo from the site. This is what we're dealing with. This is, you're all too familiar with this homogeneous type of forest stand, right? And not a lot of next generation tree growth, a lot of basically very little understory, a very cleaned out, I would say low ecological function understory for the project site. And this is commonplace, not just for this site, but throughout the Hudson Highlands in many areas, because of, there are many factors, but deer are a significant factor. We looked into a lot of different peer-reviewed articles on the impacts of white-tailed deer. The article on the left looked at the impact of deer browse on native plant regeneration. It was significant. In the next slide, I have some more detail on that. And the article on the right looked at the relationship between invasive species and white-tailed deer browse. Both of these were from Northeast temperate and Mid-Atlantic temperate forests, so relatively good reference sites. Interestingly, the article by Shen on the right in +1 showed that we had in this study, they looked at barberry, wineberry, and multiflora rose. When the deer were excluded from the area with no other action, the barberry and wineberry populations significantly decreased. The multiflora rose remained relatively neutral. So that's interesting that just simply by removing the deer browse that you actually can have a reduction in invasive species presence. It's pretty cool. Here from the first article I mentioned, it looked at the percent of stems browsed in fenced versus unfenced areas. You have just, for example, oak trees. The study found 16% of oak trees were browsed. This would be from animals other than deer. And then in an unfenced area, you have 90% browse. Pretty significant difference between within and without the fence. This is a pretty well established at this point, this deer exclosure. Here's an image from Cornell Ag Extension of a deer exclosure. On the left, not enclosed, on the right, enclosed. These images, I'm sure you've all seen in your own experience. And it's been so far as that the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation is actually now encouraging deer exclosures, and in some cases, including them in grant programs. So they're pretty widespread. And if I may zoom out for a sec and talk briefly about why we're doing this holistically, I think Yellowstone Park is a great example. I'm sure many or all of you are familiar with what happened at Yellowstone with the wolf reintroduction. Prior to the wolves, you had tremendous ungulate browse on the streams, on the floodplains, very little forest regrowth. And actually for a park like Yellowstone, a pretty poor quality habitat. When the wolves came back, they scared the deer and the moose and the elk out from the lowlands and allowed beavers to come in. Allowed trees to regrow, and then the beavers came in response to the trees, dammed up land, gave a better wetland area, and then the beavers called in the wolves, and suddenly you've got a pretty awesome ecosystem. This is simply by removing one predator. Now in New York State, obviously we're not going to have wolves back anytime soon, but we do have this deer exclusion fence has performed a similar principle by removing the browse and allowing the ecosystem to restore itself with very little other input. We looked at which species would be present on the site. For the purposes of this presentation, we took some more charismatic species: the bobcat, the black bear, the white-tailed deer, of course, fox, coyote, and maybe the cotton-tailed or rabbit, eastern cotton-tailed rabbit. We're not sure if they're present on the site, the New England cotton-tail, but we sure would like them to be present in the future. And we thought, well, what kind of dimensions could these animals fit through? We want to have wildlife passage through this fence, not just in the wetland area, but in the upland area of the project as well. So we looked at like heights and all these different concerns and did some kind of whimsical sketches of different portals. Now, these are not what we're proposing to you tonight, but we want you to know we are considering these ideas for the upland areas, different ways that animals can pass through a fence besides deer, kind of a Temple Grandin, if you will, exercise of what do deer not like, but other animals do like. For example, bottom right here has a little notch in the fence for a bear to climb over, or a weasel or something, to come over this area onto the next tree. And then other ideas of using stone walls and building little portals within the walls that a deer would not want to go through. Some very creative stuff. Now, again, we're not proposing this tonight, but this is what's on our mind in the long term for the upland areas. So the actual proposal, thank you for your patience. It's a long way of getting to what we're actually proposing for you. Essentially, we're looking at 4 wildlife portals, in total about 1,000 linear feet of wildlife portal in the wetland and wetland buffer areas. One would be, this is not a scale drawing, but one would be at the top of Foundry Brook, one would be at the bottom, one would be at the top of this tributary stream, which we don't have a name for at the moment, kind of from the Jaycox Road side, and another would be from this other culvert underpass that goes under Fishkill Road. We also intentionally set the deer fence back. At this scale, you can't tell, but we set it back pretty far from Fishkill Road, so we won't have like a wildlife entrapment issue right on the road. We intentionally left a really big swath of land where deer could travel along the edge of the fence and not become a hazard to vehicles. So this is our proposal. In addition to this, we have a series of maintenance gates we'd like to install for just ongoing, everything from ongoing cleanup, access. If a kid throws a Frisbee over the fence, how do you get to it type of thing, simple. And we also have installed, I think last week we put in 5 game cameras in the area to start to observe what types of animals we see, and we can adapt as we go. Almost everything here, we can add gates, we can add portals in places if we see a need as the project continues. I also want to show here the argument for the size of the deer fence that we're proposing. It's as many of you I'm sure are aware, in island biogeography or conservation biology, you get into the issue of refuge design. And edge effect is one of the big hindrances of park design. Edge effect is where you have a lot of invasive species vectors and problems. What we're going for is less edge effect. So one way you can get less edge effect is to have a single large clump. So we'd like to enclose this whole area rather than sections of the area. It was discussed at some point, well, we could avoid like permitting altogether if we just stuck to the upland areas. We're like, no, that's not what we want to do. We want to do the best project we can, which is why we're before you tonight. Hopefully this is clear, this graphic. So then here's, simple, basically what we're proposing for the standard fence. It's as proposed last time. However, what we have updated in this plan is a more wildlife-friendly passage. I think in the last meeting it was referred to as a wildlife fence. This is a wire fence with 10-inch by 20-inch gaps at the base of it, turned upside down. Typically, these are the other direction, as I think the chairman pointed out, wildlife fence in his remarks in the last meeting. We looked at other options. This seems like our best bet, essentially stretching this between posts tightly. We also looked into like potential for problems with birds and bird entrapment. With these types of fences, we don't see bird entrapment. We don't see much bird damage. There would be installed also reflective material for things like owls or swooping birds to have a bit more of a sense of space. But and then in terms of how animals, small animals, smaller than a fox or a coyote would move through this site, there'll be, and even in the wetland area, there'll be undulation in the topography of the landscape. We're not going to be pinning this into the ground exactly, so it's completely impenetrable. Animals will be able to squeeze under the fence in certain places. In fact, when we've installed these in the past, often within days, we see the existing game trails have little tunnels that have been burrowed out right under the fence in places. And it shouldn't limit any type of passage like that. We also confirmed with the building department that the fence meets code, which I know was a concern in the last meeting. And last but just 2 slides left here. Thank you for your attention. I want to, in terms of how we're approaching this part of the project, meeting with you and this great team we have, including, I already mentioned Trillium. We also have Beatty and Watson on the team. Ian Kingsley is doing is our arborist and our tree whisperer, as we refer to him. We have a really great team of people, and what we're trying to do here is something, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but it's called adaptive collaborative management. Essentially, it starts, you conceptualize a project, you make plans, you implement, you analyze and adapt the project, learn from it, and then you come back to the beginning. So, for example, if we see in game cameras animals moving in one area, we can shift portals to those areas over time. If we see other problems, we can adapt them over time. So I want to make sure you all know we have a very team-oriented approach here, and we're committed to long-term management and supervision of the client. Terry is committed to long-term management and supervision of make sure we reach the really high ecological goals she set for our team. And the last slide here, I promise, is just other things coming down the pipeline here in the future, that we're discussing as a team, part of that adaptive management plan, forest thinning and diversification, aquatic passage, modifications to the pond dam, seed collection and propagation, mitigating sound from the roads, habitat structures like bat boxes and snake hibernaculums and the like, improved wildlife passage, that refers to some of the more whimsical ideas for the upland areas, invasive species removal, which has already begun with Trillium, thankfully, and maybe some wetland creation and stream daylighting in areas over time. So just to let you know, there are bigger ideas at work here in play that we hope to move forward with in the future. But for tonight, we're just really hoping we can get approval before we get too late in the season and the brush gets high. We're ready to go on the fence, and we're really hoping we can get approval tonight. Obviously, that's up to you all. But we feel like we've put together a really solid presentation here. Happy to take any questions and feedback and requests for modification, but look forward to your response. Thank you.
Thank you for the very thorough and well thought out presentation. I have 2 simple questions. Just refresh my memory, what's the approximate acreage that's being fenced in?
Approximately 20 acres.
And the amount of linear feet of fence?
Well, let me ask my colleague here exactly.
Okay.
About 5,000, sir.
Okay. So questions or comments from the board, please? And Max?
I got a question.
Oh, sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Max. My
No,
speaker,
I was just gonna say,
my
I feel
headset
like-
was off, so which I'm always doing. I forget to turn this down on. I guess Brian, thank you for the presentation. That was really nice. If you could say in like kind of one soundbite what the goal is for doing this restoration work with the fence and putting the fence up, if you could just kind of, you know, in a sentence, kind of give me that elevator speech as to what that soundbite is for why to do this.
Sure, thank you. The soundbite would be the goal of the project is to exclude deer from the project area so that the forest can regenerate from passive regeneration and also active regeneration, to be designed and completed active regeneration. Passive regeneration meaning from the existing seed bank of plants, and active regeneration through things like forest thinning and reforestation.
Okay. And so by doing this and regenerating the forest, what is the outcome that you expect from the property?
The outcome we expect is an improvement in ecological function, to put it scientifically. We expect an improvement in biodiversity and diversity of species. We expect the improvement of specifically understory plants and mid-story plants. We expect the project to enable the creation of what we refer to as next generation forest, which if we go back to the earlier slide, I showed you a homogeneous forest stand on the side of a hill. That's not what we want. What we want is a dense forest that's good for animals, it's good for birds, fixes a lot of carbon, creates amazing habitat, and really resonates and has ripple effects to surrounding properties where the seed will be carried of native species to distant lands, so to speak, you know, to other properties by birds and animals to help regenerate those areas as well.
Okay, and so that's obviously a long horizon here, right? So, and again, forgive me because I'm an engineer, so I look for measures. So what would be like an in-process measure that you would be doing here over the next 10 years or whatever with this horizon here?
Sure, I'd say like a 10 year is a good milestone. If we get to 10 years, when we get to 10 years with approval, I hope, we will have measurable success, ways to measure success. That will be an increase in forest density and increase in species diversity. In the 5-year period, we expect that to happen as well, more at the understory level. We should start to see more saplings occur. And then if we can keep going, and the intent is to keep going, 20, 30 years in the future, we can start to get not just a second, but a third generation of plants started under that time frame.
Okay. Okay, and those are attributes that you can measure: the diversity of the species, the density of the forest. You have kind of metrics for that? Absolutely.
There's qualitative and quantitative metrics for that. I don't have a quantitative, what we call a QAPP plan for this, but qualitatively, we do have plans to observe. We're working with Mr. Kingsley as our arborist, and Tom at Trillium, and the other folks we mentioned, to be identified consultants, our own biologists and teams. What we're going to do is look at this and see how it's working, and then make modifications over time as needed.
Okay, great, thank you.
Scott, did you have?
I did have a question. So besides the species list, you have baseline data on species of communities, whether plant or animal, at this point?
We have a natural resource inventory that we did of the forest community types, and we kind of broke down where those species exist in other areas. We obviously have, like, land use, land cover. We have that. We have also Trillium has done work as well in partnership with this to do their own mapping or as part of the project team. we have that data, and we also have a forest inventory from Ian Kingsley.
Right, but besides species richness, if you really want to measure diversity, you need more than just an inventory.
I completely agree with you. No doubt there. We can certainly report back to you with that information as the project continues, if you'd like. Not to dispute your point at all. I agree. I think we're trying to walk a measured line here between cost and benefit for our client. Doing those types of studies for this type of project, they can go on and on for a long time, and we're trying to get this in the ground. It's a pretty proven technique, as you know, I'm sure, and we're trying to get to the action side of this sooner than later.
Do I have other questions or comments?
I would just like to say that I support. I think everything that they presented tonight, I have no issue with. The biggest thing for me is the commitment to, if the board allows the installation of the fence, the time commitment that's going to come with that, and they seem to be presenting a very holistic plan, and are looking to the future for it to succeed. The literature is really strong in the scientific community, the ecological community, in regards to deer exclusion and the benefits that it provides. And it looks like they're heading in that direction without, maybe all of the long-term plans aren't being laid out right now, but it seems like, they're in the early stages of really crafting a guided management plan that's holistic for the entire property. And I think there's enough information from others that have done similar projects, maybe not at this scale, in the area, that giving an approval for the fencing at this point would be appropriate. So we're not delaying them from an ecological standpoint, because it seems like they're trying to do the right thing here.
So I also agree, and I don't know if there's any way that you could even report back to us in a few years to update us. Obviously, I don't think we can do anything binding like that, but I think it would be nice to just to hear an update to see how it's going, for our own understanding if other projects like that come before us. And second is, I'd be all for reintroducing wolves, but I'm guessing that's definitely
right.
not going to happen.
That's part two. Yeah, that's part two. No.
We could just slip it in.
We would be so happy to come back and tell you, like, in less than a couple of years, about how it's going. We're all the consultants on this. I'm in Beacon. The other consultants are in other places nearby. We come before the board from time to time. My firm does, and other ones more frequently. And we're certainly happy to give updates. It's in all our interest. I think this is really cool. This is right in the mission of what our client wants to do, and we have other plans for the project. We'll certainly be coming back, to you all in the future, if you'll have us. Even if you don't require it of us, I'm sure I can speak on behalf of our client Terry that she'd be more than happy. She wants to do this to contribute. She wants to do this to set an example, and I think it's just like, if I may express my opinion, this is the type of project I'd like to do more of. This is very promising, can reduce a lot of inputs, just passive hands-off restoration, and then build from there with the active complementing what we observe over the years.
Anybody else have any other comments or questions? I think it's a great project. I have 160 some odd acres. I wish I could fence it all. And I don't have the problem with invasives on the whole that I've seen, because I've walked part of the property with Tom. So with that, if everybody's comfortable, I think that we should contemplate permitting it now so that they can get to work. With that said, do I have a motion to grant a permit?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Max, I don't think there are any really major contingencies that are required other than your inspection and making sure that the different wildlife entrances seem to work. And those might have to be adapted as the fence is built itself.
Yeah, I
Right?
agree. I think I'll cut the permit. We'll be in touch with Brian. Yeah, again, the biggest thing would be reporting and just keeping us in the loop during construction, during the through the regulated areas, and I'll come out and make some visits, and I'll report back to the board.
And I assume you had mentioned before that you've been, I guess it's the building inspector to make sure that the height of the fence
Yeah,
is what they want. Okay,
yeah.
excellent. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. We're so happy.
Have a good evening. Thank you. It's a great project.
Thank you.
Okay, Cheryl, it looks, if I'm looking at the chat properly, that if I'm pronouncing it right, Steensma and Prins is here.
Correct. Just moving them over.
Okay. So I would like to view this, I'd like the board to view this as two different applications, which it is. One is for a dock and the other is for a swimming pool and additional construction to the house. And Max, please weigh in. I am tempted to go for the dock first because I think it's far simpler an application than the other one.
Yeah, I mean, and just to speak my piece here too, I think we should hear the applicant on both projects, but in all reality, setting a site visit to seeing the proposed work areas in person, so the board can be there and kind of get a picture of what's on the ground too would be beneficial, and then discussing details of the permitting at a subsequent meeting would probably be appropriate.
I absolutely agree, because looking at the applications, I don't feel they're complete. Okay, so if we can allow whether it's Ms. Steensma and or Mr. Prins in and to present to us, or if they have an agent with them. And let's begin with the dock.
This is Rick Prins, Richard Prins. My wife Connie's with me, and our architect Richard Lewis is also on. Steve Marino, who we've been working with as a wetlands consultant, and who you may recall the bankers used to own the property before us, had another live meeting he had to be at this evening, so he may or may not be able to chime in at some point. So the first project that you wanted to discuss was adding a seasonal floating dock to the existing concrete pier, which is necessary basically for people to get in and out of a boat safely at any tide level other than basically the hour before and the hour after high tide. It's a very simple project with basically no disturbance of anything, the way it's going to be constructed. And we think it checks all of the environmental boxes. If there's any other information you need or questions you have, we'd be happy to provide it.
I have a bunch of questions, but does anybody else have questions before I ask?
Max should have questions.
Yeah, I mean, they're more administrative, but I'm sure Andy's going to touch on them.
But you've got the other environmental permits from the Army Corps of Engineers and all those.
We have completed the application. The Army Corps came back with 5 minor questions, which we addressed, so that is complete. I think there's a state sign off for environmental coordination, but no DEC approval is required. As I said in the application, we had conversation with Angela Skimizzi. from the region, and because there's nothing being attached to the banks, it's doesn't require a permit from them. And there's no permit required for underwater because A, there's no feathering, and B, we own the land under the water.
Do I have other questions before I make some comments? We will need, if the DEC is not requiring a permit, we'll just need the letter that you received from them.
It
telling
was-
us that.
Yeah, it was
I am,
it was entirely oral, but I can ask Angela.
I'm sure it can be in email correspondence as well.
Yeah.
I am curious who filled out the NOAA fisheries report.
Myself, after with consultation with Brian Orzel at the Army Corps.
Okay. I guess we'd probably be a little more comfortable if that was filled out with, you know, a certified professional. And then I'm curious what size, it looks like looking at your drawing, you have a floating dock to the north of the existing cement pier structure. And to the south, it looked to me in the drawing that you're planning to moor a boat, or am I misreading that?
No, we would tie the boat up on the south side of the pier, and we would then use the floating dock for people to get in and out of the boat. But I'd prefer to tie up a boat right at the pier rather than tie it to a floating dock.
Okay, and what size vessel are you contemplating?
Somewhere between 18 and 27 feet.
Okay, so we're talking about something that's of minor displacement. So we're talking, you know, maybe 4 or 5 tons at most in terms of displacement of a vessel.
I would think, yeah. I mean,
We're not talking about we're not talking about a large cabin cruiser.
No, not.
Okay. Okay.
Electric motor runabout. You know, to
Okay.
go up and down the river and put a kayak in.
Okay. So, you know, in my mind, I think that the board should look at the site. My concerns are essentially that the permitting is in place, which would be predominantly from the Army Corps. I am, you know, I have both boated and kayak past that over the years, that the structure, the masonry structure of the dock is in decent shape. I don't know how great it is at this point, and if anything can be done to fix it if need be. And other than that, you know, the materials that would be used for the floating dock, that would be something that we'll call it green, meaning I'd like to not see something with treated lumber, rather a properly resourced hardwood, or, as much as I hate plastics, a plastic that wouldn't put chemicals in.
Yeah, it'll either be aluminum, polypropylene, or a hardwood such as Ipa or teak or mahogany. I don't do pressure treated.
Okay. Yeah, but like if it is a hardwood, we'd like to see it responsibly harvested, you know, whether from a plantation or from a salvaged wood rather than cut down. But that's fine.
Yeah, that's about all you can buy anymore. So
Max, I think you had some questions and procedural.
Yeah, no, I mean, really for us and for myself, I want to get out on the site and have you walk us through the plan, the plan set in person, so we can get a sense of the scale, you know, outside of looking at the paper here and the plan set that you drew together. I think that's probably the most appropriate step at this point for the rest of the board as well, just to get a sense and, you know, a better sense of what's happening on site now. And then obviously, like Andy mentioned, the Army Corps permit will be, this permit will be contingent on you receiving Army Corps approval as well. So that will be a condition of our issuance. So having that in hand is going to be required before we can actually issue a permit to the building department for you to begin construction.
Yeah, that's okay with us. We're not trying to sidestep
Okay.
them, so.
And I think when we,
Okay.
normally we're looking for engineer plans. I do know the site, and to me, this might be more minor in scope, but I think that the board needs to look at it and make that decision. It might be enough that working with a reputable maritime builder is fine, because it's a relatively simple project from what I see. And I know quite a bit about docks. We have any other comments on this, or should we talk about the second application, which is far more complicated? I'm going to take that as a no, so why don't we move on to that? And I believe you said you had your architect with you. I don't know if she would like to share their screen.
Hi, it's Richard Lewis. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How are you today?
I'm good. I can put the plan on the screen. If you explain to me how to do that, share screen or?
Yes, it is share screen.
Can everybody see this?
Part of it. Okay, and now I
Yep,
do.
there you go. Yep. Now, many of us are familiar with the site, though it's been a couple years since we've been down there. But anybody who's been on the board for at least 5 years has been down at the site multiple times.
Right. So, I mean, I can quickly just walk you through the site.
Mm-hmm.
This is Kings Dock Road, which comes down and then wraps around along the railroad tracks. And then you enter the site by car here, or you park at the top where there's a garage and you can walk down a steep set of stairs. It's a very steep site from the road down to the bottom. This is the existing house. And it has a patio that wraps around and a lawn in the front that's fairly flat. And then I believe most of this site is wetlands. This is all wetlands, this whole area down here. And this is all very, very steep terrain that's very rocky. There's a stream which comes down right past the house and empties into the wetlands area. And again, it's also very steep terrain. It's a big bowl, basically. This whole thing, everything's draining down into this area. So the proposal is to add a right now this house is a 3-level house. The bottom level you enter on grade here, and then and then you can also enter by walking up a set of stairs into the house right here that has the living room, kitchen, and then there's a staircase inside that brings you up to the bedroom. Rick and Connie are interested in having a master suite or a primary suite with primary bathroom addition that is on the level of the entry area here, because they do not want to be walking up and down stairs to get to the bedroom. And then in addition to that, I guess the main part of this application is to build an indoor or indoor-outdoor pool for health reasons in this area here, which is right above. This is the parking area right here. So I don't know if Rick, you want to add anything to this in terms of the reason why you feel like you wanted, why this is so important to you. But there's very little space on this site that actually is either not in the wetland or in a very steep terrain area. And this is really probably the only spot where you could actually build a structure like they're talking about.
Yeah, I would just add that we're both almost well into our 70s. And while we can tackle the stairs at this point in time, that may not be the case. We love the property. We'd like to live out our days there. as much as we can. And that's the primary impetus for, putting a bedroom on the same level as the living room, kitchen, and so forth. And to add a door that, a pool, sorry, that we and our guests can enjoy. And we've cited it so that it's as inobtrusive as possible and as far away from the wetlands and from the water courses as possible. And think it touches the bases, and obviously we need to go through all of this with you because it is a sensitive site.
When did you buy the property, Richard?
We bought it in the fall of 2020.
Richard, could you just refresh me on the size of the pool?
The pool as drawn is 18 feet wide and 50 feet long.
Okay.
I would have loved a 60-foot long pool, but it
And it does have an area around the pool that will have a small bathroom and changing area and a little seating area. But the 18 by 40 is where my cursor is outlining right now.
And it is an indoor pool.
Yeah, the vision for it is that it in a fall to spring it would be indoor.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would be able to open it up with, sliding glass doors and partially retractable roof in order to have it open for the, summer season.
Right.
And the proposal, and I did this with a pool at our prior home that I built. It was an indoor pool to run it without chlorine or chemicals. The UV filters have gotten good enough that if you put two of them in tandem, you're taken care of.
Okay, good. Max, why don't we start with you? Because I think you and I spoke very briefly that we thought the application is incomplete. So I think maybe you would be best beginning with what you'd like to see on a procedural level, and then I'll ask the different board members to make preliminary comments.
Sure. Well, I think firstly, and this is something that we talked about in the field when I first came out and met with Steve and yourself. This plan that you're showing me now, this site survey, does not include the wetland setbacks for the stream that runs north to south on your property, which would also then encumber most of the home and the proposed addition. So we'll need to see that change made to this plan. The only thing that's showing right now is the wetland setback for the tidal wetland area that your architect was pointing out earlier. That is the base of that bowl.
Okay, we can add that. I thought it was so obvious. 98% of the addition is in the watercourse buffer, and none of the pool facility is in the watercourse buffer. None of the, as you see with the wetlands buffer, which is there, none of the addition is in the wetlands buffer, and a good half of the pool facility is at the edge of the wetlands buffer.
Right. It's all regulated under the same section of code. So you can consider the watercourse and wetlands buffer as the same regulatory standard. We need to look at that from administrative standpoint in terms of increase in structures within that regulated setback. That helps us better quantify mitigatory measures down the road when we're looking at permitting something like this, and what will we be recommending in the future or mandating when the application is complete. So
okay, now a question.
That information is important.
Question for you on that. That does show in I think it's the second site plan. I didn't have Beatty and Watson do it as from a survey point of view. Do you want us to sketch it the way it is on the second plan, or what?
I want you to accurately depict 100 feet from the surveyed edge of the water course.
Yeah, okay, but you don't care if we do that, if Richard Lewis does it on his computer, or I go back to Beatty and Watson and have them do it.
I think we
As
want it
long as
flagged,
it's
don't we,
accurate.
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we need it flagged at this moment, but I believe, and Max or somebody else weigh in, because so much work had been done over the last 8 or 9 years at Bankers. There's a huge amount of survey maps exist, and they do exist with the wetland buffer accurately put on them. So I would be far more comfortable with it coming from Beatty and Watson, from, a firm that's surveyors and civil engineers, than from your architect drawing it, because he's dealing with secondary material.
As an addendum, the wetlands buffer is not anything that Beatty and Watson ever drew until they drew the wetlands buffer here. Because part of the permission that Doug Banker got was to actually move the wetlands north closer to the road. So the wetlands buffer is now about 10 feet deeper than what it was when you last looked at it. So you are
I'm
seeing.
not sure if I'm following you.
Yeah, and you have me confused now too, because I don't remember any deviation, basically a realignment of the wetland at all.
Yeah, as I understand it, he was given permission to, in effect, extend and deepen the north border of the wetlands closer to the slope that comes down from Kings Dock Road. And if you look at one of the old surveys, you'll see that the wetlands buffer is only about 5 feet behind the brick wall where the pool deck ends.
That's this.
And now it's, it was about 5 feet behind that. And now it's about
That,
15 feet behind
but
it.
sorry, this is the 100-foot wetlands buffer right here.
Right. Yeah.
100 feet,
Right.
right? And it goes around and just misses the house, which I guess was
Right.
why the
Right.
house was, cited this
Right.
way in the first place. But you can see that some of this proposed pool is within the 100 feet. Again, I agree that Beatty and Watson ultimately has to do the surveying and the planning, but it is within that area now. Although this is raised up because of the slope. It's much high. The slope, the current slope is much higher here than it is here. So this is this platform is raised
that's
up.
obvious. That's
Yeah.
obvious.
Right.
Yeah, but I can ask Beatty and Watson to add it, and the water course buffer has not changed 1 iota. So that will be exactly what they put on a prior survey.
Okay, a couple comments. One is, and Max, please jump in, or anybody else. I think this is 2 permits, because the addition to the house could be looked at as an essential living structure, and I use the word could. The pool is not an essential structure. So they are handled differently. And rather than we normally do not allow a non-essential structure to be within a wetland buffer unless there is really an extreme reason for it, and there would then have to be other mitigations to improve habitat, etc. So rather than having you spend a lot of, and I'm thinking out loud now, a lot of money with surveys and what have you, I do think that the board needs to go out and look at this. And I think the best way to look at it would be to stake where you want the addition of the house to be, where you want the pool and the pool deck. And the pool is a rather large pool. I mean, I assume you want it for laps. I understand the length, but an 18 by 50 pool is a big pool. And I think that, and Max, you might say that we should also have at least a preliminary flagging of where the wetland would intersect the pool, so we have an idea of what's going on.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
I mean, I agree with that.
Right? Rather than rather than doing layers and layers of paperwork, I'd like to just make it easier so that we can go look at it, see if as it's designed now, is it feasible? How can we, for instance, I'm just looking at it now, the pool, I'm sort of asking myself, could it be pulled a touch to the, would be the southeast so that we're out of the buffer?
This in this direction, sorry.
No, the other direction, right? Am I?
Closer to the addition and
This way.
maybe
Well, no, going southeast
Yeah.
would
where
be,
where the pool deck and closer to the addition.
Yeah.
The wetland buffer is not, it should be overlaid on top of the pool, so it's not kind of deceiving, Andy, because it's
yeah,
running
I'm not
underneath.
really seeing exactly.
It's this line, you follow my cursor.
Yeah. So why not? The easiest way is rather than me say southeast, just say, why not move the pool slightly further south, for instance? So then you're at least getting it out of the wetland buffer.
No, it'll be more in the
More,
wetland.
the buffer, this is the wetland.
Okay,
buffer.
yes. That's
Yeah.
my bad. Yep.
That's okay. Sorry, right, this is the wetland line.
Yeah.
This is 100 feet. So
Okay.
by pushing it up the hill, it creates, this is all ledge. So it raises the elevation. The idea was that more or less this platform would be more or less at the same level as the house addition, even though this could be this could slope down slightly, but it would be, easily walkable without steps to get from this level to this level.
Yeah.
So
and-
you're at this point, you're asking the board to basically permit I'm going to call it a very large residential pool that is almost completely in the wetland buffer. Members of the board can weigh in, but we have never done that, and I'm not sure we're ever going to do it.
Well, I would
So
like,
one of my questions is, the survey you have up here is only showing, you have several parcels. It's sort of a compound. Are there other places to put the pool?
I can just mention, I don't think it shows on this plan, but there's another area. I think there's one other possible area that was in this area. Rick, does that we looked at?
well, no.
I don't have the whole survey.
I mean, there's a different plot of land, and there's a spot about 350 feet from the house where you could conceivably put a pool.
It's down
Right.
here somewhere, right? I mean,
But it's not on this plot. And at some point, I'd like to understand where the policy about non-essential uses comes from, so that I can think about it.
That is what the board has been doing. We are here to protect the environment, to protect wetlands and buffers.
So am I.
And we want to be as accommodating as possible.
Yep.
But I actually, I misread, and that's my bad, the plan, and I should have realized. But I mean, this is a very large residential pool, and it's almost completely within a buffer. I'm not, again, I think the board needs to go out and look. I think two things should happen. One is, I think that the two of you and your architect should rethink where else it could go. I'm assuming you don't want to put it on one of the other parcels for two reasons. One is you like where it is and it's more convenient to the house. I understand that. The other is, at some point in time, might you want to sell off the other parcel that has a house on it? I also understand that too. But I'm not sure that's going to change the way we weigh this project. So that's one thought. I think the other thing is, when the board goes to look at this, is there some type of, and I think it would be very significant, habitat improvement, if it were even warranted, to be done to the stream or the wetland or the tidal wetland. But I'm just not sure that's the case. But I think that's probably where we should begin. I don't know. I'd like to hear thoughts from the board and Max.
Andy,
Yes, we hear you, Lou.
we have to have the entire board eyeball that. We have to walk it. There's no way out of it. No way out of it. All right?
I agree with that. I agree with
Okay.
that. Other
Okay, so
thoughts?
No, we need to
That's the
see the
bottom line.
property. I just would like to see if there's any way to entertain moving the pool anyplace else. What other areas have you considered? You know, what are some of the mitigations you've considered? Obviously, you know, a pool of this size and magnitude in the buffer is kind of an exception here that you're asking for. So, like, why do you think that we should approve it?
It satisfies all of the 93.8 criteria. But it's about 2/3 in the wetlands buffer and about 1/3 out of it. We thought about pushing it back, but then either it's gonna further north, but then either it's gonna sit so high that you see it from the Hudson River at all points, basically, or you're gonna have to mine so much rock, you know, like 750 cubic yards was Charlie Polhemus's rough estimate, which is, you know, hammering and hammering and hammering it away. And it sits the way it's drawn and cited, you'll see it kind of just sits right in that little bowl there. Just behind and on top of a brick wall, which is also a non-essential structure that you gave approval for, so.
I personally, I don't remember giving approval for a brick wall over there, but my memory is.
Yeah, I
doesn't
don't
do
remember
good.
that. I
Yeah.
don't think we ever gave an approval for brick wall. I don't
I don't
remember
either.
any brick wall.
I mean, I think to expedite this, I think that a rough marking of both the structure, which I think is less problematic in the pool, you know, staking should be done. And I think you should work with Cheryl and Max to schedule a site visit for the Conservation Board and let us look at this. And then we can give you guidance of where we think you should go from there.
Okay, and the structure being less problematic than the pool are there particular issues with a pool, especially one that doesn't run on chemicals?
It's we don't normally permit non-essential structures in wetland buffers.
Yeah, I was
Wetland buffers
on your comment a moment ago that the structure was less problematic than the
No,
pool.
I think he meant the house structure, right?
Yeah, the house structure.
Oh, okay. I
You meant
got
Yes,
it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Max, you could jump in, but this to me has to be two different permits. They're just,
I mean,
right? We're not building.
I mean, I see where you're coming from. I don't know. It depends. I think that could kind of be up to the applicant as well, depending on, you know, if they want an all or nothing decision. We can also, in the future, when it comes time, you know, make a decision to permit one thing and not the other if the applicant is willing to go down that road. But if the applicant would like to have it considered separately from the living quarters portion of the project, I think that's valid as well. And, you know, just to speak to the you know, the specifics of the Chapter 93, you know, it clearly states that, you know, mitigatory measures and alternatives and reviewing those things as part of a complete application are, you know, what we look for when we seek providing approval on a project like this. So, you know, that goes a long way. You know, I know that you've done a lot of that legwork, it sounds like, and collected information on different alternatives. Laying that out so that the board is aware and sees that as a whole adds a lot to these applications. But I will echo everybody else's sentiment about just getting on site to kind of refresh what the property looks like. And any sort of extra detail provided about the pool house itself in terms of what that structure will look like. You know, will it essentially be a completely enclosed space? Is going to be important to this board too, because then, you know, we'll have to, you know, weigh out essentially putting an entirely enclosed, essentially a building there.
That's bigger
You know,
than the
within the
house,
buffer.
basically, right?
Right.
I have a quick question, if I could interrupt for a second.
Sure.
If the pool that we are proposing was not within the wetland buffer area, is this an application that would be something that would be as of right, or you would still need to rule because it's a non-essential, considered a non-essential building?
If it was out of the
You would-
wetland,
Yeah.
go ahead, Max.
Well, I don't want you to walk into this question without also, like, you know, that we have steep slopes regulations
Yeah,
as well
yeah.
in the town. So
That's
Right.
what I was gonna say.
that's-
It's a steep slope issue.
right. So if this was a completely flat parcel, then yeah, no, the wetland permitting, once if you're outside of that buffer, it would no longer be considered under that section of code. But
Okay, that's all.
moving it back towards that space, you know, it's kind of a loaded question in this case. So
Yeah, sorry. Okay, got it.
But I have to ask, I mean, you bought the property in 2020, and I really don't mean any offense, but like, you obviously knew that this was kind of something that you wanted to do. Why would you buy a property like this? Honestly, like, this is not a kind of a property that you're gonna put the size of the pool here. I mean, it's a completely, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but like, this is the kind of thing that we have all the time where people come with these hardships, and we want to put all this stuff in the wetlands buffer, and, you know, we need to do this, but quite frankly, it wasn't the right place to maybe, you know, even invest in. That's just my opinion. Only speaking from my opinion. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but.
I studied the code before we bought the property. I see nothing in the town code of Philipstown that would prevent this.
A pool in the wetlands.
A pool within the wetland buffer. It is not in the wetlands. The purpose of 93.8 is to approve things that are in the buffer.
It's far more complicated than that. Rather than, I don't think we need to get into a protracted argument.
Yeah,
We
I
need to do
agree.
a site visit,
Yep.
you know, because just, you know, the old adage that, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words, well, a site visit is worth 10,000 words and a lot of maps. So
Yeah.
if that could be staked out, that would, you know, that's where we should begin. I think at the same time too, I do think you should look at potential alternatives. You know, we want to be accommodating, but we also need to do what is best for the town and the environment.
Yeah, we
And I'd like to think
understand.
there's a solution.
We did look at all other sites on this parcel. We rejected trying to use the other parcel for that, which already has 2 homes on it, each with a 1-family C of O.
So,
And as far as mitigation is concerned, we're happy to do more mitigation. We love the marsh. And in fact, I watch it carefully
He
and
spends his days restoring the
and try to deal with you know, piece by piece with Japanese knotweed and Phragmites. And I know they planted mallow, for example. I think Steve said they put in about 100 mallow. I only see about 10. We want to put it in, you know, 90 more in, etc. I'm all in favor of that. We've had several parcels we've owned in wetlands, and we've worked with the, you know, the towns in each case to work something out.
okay, so I think where we go from here is let's set up a site visit, and the board will look at it. It would be ideal if it doesn't need to be done by a surveyor. I think approximately staking where the pool house and the addition to the house would be very helpful, but particularly pool and pool deck.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay? Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Bye now.
Cheryl, you probably saw the chat. I do think we should go to Lath Pond because I think it's going to be pretty quick, or so I hope.
Okay, just move Margaret over.
Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
I'm well. So I guess I can share my screen and then I can.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. All right, so we have a project at Last Pond there, which is off of Langate Road. I'm going to zoom in here.
This wasn't in the package, right?
It's not
No.
in the package. There's not an
Okay.
application. I don't believe there actually will be a required permit from the town of Philipstown. We're in the process of getting a repair permit for a dam permit from the New York State DEC. It is a repair which is exempt from your code. In your code, maintenance and repair of dams is an exempt from the wetlands permit. So the parcel is here, and
To answer Bob's question, I had spoken to Katrina from the Land Trust and also Max. I had suggested that you come in to explain the project.
yes,
Because it might over time require something from us. It is
It might.
hardly a minor. I'm familiar with the dam. It is hardly a minor project. And it's a very, in my mind, personally, I think it's a very good project. And I think that as a board, we might be able to help make sure that it happens.
okay, yep, and we're here willingly and talking about it, and if we need a permit, we'll obviously get one, but from my reading of the code, I don't believe we need one. But I'll explain the process and where we are at this point.
That'd be great.
Okay, so Last Pond is off of Langate Road. The parcel of Last Pond is actually in several parcels, but this is the project site. It's the main owner of the pond, and he is the owner of the dam, and he's in the process of getting a permit in order to repair the dam. And then this parcel is going to be donated to the land trust. So let's look at the dam. The dam is somewhere between 180 years old, 100, maybe 80 years old, maybe 100 years old. It's in pretty bad shape. It's leaking. There's major cracks, minor cracks. And we've devised 5 work stage areas. So once the permits are all secure, we're going to access the property actually through the neighbor's yard, come down, and the first work zone, this dam is actually in pretty good shape. It has this riprap in front of it, which has become part of the dam also. But we're going to put a cofferdam into the pond and expose the backside of the dam, which it's not very high. It's like 4 or 5, maybe 6 feet high. It's not a tall dam. And at that point, it will be injected and parged with some materials that, will strengthen the existing concrete and fill in all the voids. And then there's actually some riprap on this side of the dam, which will be taken out and put back in. Again, This is the second work area, same sort of process. And 3 is also the same process. When we get to work area 4, this is where the spillway is. And actually this part of the dam will need to be cut out and have a new spillway poured in. And then this is the part of the dam that's in the worst shape. And once the cofferdam is in place here, there is going to be a new dam built behind the existing dam. So it'll take up some volume within the pond, but it's not going to happen. You know, there's nothing going to happen on the outside of the dam. There'll be, you know, we do have to access it. So there will probably be some disturbance to the wetland in this area. This is a New York State DEC wetland. We'll be getting a New York State DEC wetland permit that's part of the dam permit to go in this area. The limits of disturbance are really here, creating this path along the front of the dam in order to get, you know, men and probably pickup truck and backhoe down this area. We envision that the concrete truck will probably sit here and pump down, because bringing a concrete truck on, even if it's a constructed haul road, would be difficult because they're very heavy.
How long would pumping be?
What?
How long would the distance for pumping be?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
It's very significant though.
It's significant, but it's all downhill, so that helps.
Right.
I can show you some pictures of the dam.
Yeah, that would be good. For those that are not familiar with it, I'm going to roughly say, and this has been this way for 30 years, the pond is probably 2 feet, maybe more lower. There's the crack than it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's about a foot lower than it will be.
Hey, Andy, the trees have all been cut to get to the dam. They've all been cut already.
Okay.
Yep, the trees were cut and left in place. There was no earth disturbance. They walked in, cut the trees, left them, and I think they stacked them, you know, but there was no, you know, no pulling, no grubbing. So we did cut the trees.
It was done by a professional, that's why. Anyhow, Andy, it's yeah, they're all cut and pushed out of the way. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe this is the existing spillway. You can see that part of the dam is fallen over here. It's, you know, it's in disrepair. It's pretty old.
Mm-hmm.
I have another sheet of pictures.
Margaret, while you do that, I'm just going to make one clarification. The land itself is not being donated to the land trust. We're working with another conservation organization that will be kind of acquiring this land along with an adjoining property. So just about, you know, probably, let's say 115 acres, and a donation of a conservation easement to HHLT will be placed on the land,
Okay.
basically restricting the development on it.
So let me zoom in here a little bit more. You know, so it's a concrete dam. The pond itself is not very deep. It does have it has a DEC permit. They treat it because there was an algae plume here a few years ago, so they have permission to treat it. It's pretty clear pond. And let me see what else I can show you. You know, Beatty and Watson did go out in a boat, and we took all these pictures of the pond.
So you're saying, Margaret, that that's a crack in the dam? Is that what I see there, or is it just, it looks like,
Well,
I mean, there's a lot of cracks over here, but I
Yeah.
mean, like that
This is the
horizontal
lead,
one.
this is ledge rock, I believe, but there's cracks running along the dam,
Mhm.
and there's also cracks underneath there's hairline cracks here, like here's a photo, we can zoom in on this. You know, there's several cracks like
Right,
this.
I see that for
Just
sure,
going
yeah.
down, Yeah.
Right.
So there is this product, I can look it up, but I don't remember the name of it. And it basically, you widen the crack a little and you inject this product in, and it expands within the concrete and it seals it. You know, they've made advancements in the last decade or so. They have much better products that you can use. And then also for hairline cracks, there'll be a parging all along on the outside. This is going to be, it'll be labor intensive. It will be highly supervised because there's going to be an engineer on site who's going to be making decisions on what exact product will be used, because we can't inventory every crack and we can't see everything until we actually lower the dam and with the cofferdam. We're not lowering the water level, we're just using a cofferdam to segment different sections and you know, work on the dam in sections.
Is the dam in any danger of collapsing in sections?
Well, it seems pretty, you know, it's been there for a long time.
Well, yeah, they don't
They-
build them
they
like
crack-
that anymore, so
Yeah,
you probably could
you know,
stand there with cracks and everything.
Sometimes when I walked out there, I was like, I'm surprised this isn't considered an emergency, but the DEC is not considering it an emergency. You know, we're going through the permitting process. I don't think it's gonna fall down. So,
Bob, the pond is much, and it has been this way for at least 30 years. It's much lower than it should be.
Oh, okay.
And it's not there's no major source of water other than the watershed to feed it. So the level does not fluctuate tremendously.
Okay, yeah, I don't know
what
this
happened
site.
in Irene, but otherwise, I lived next to it for, I don't know, 6 years or something, 6, 7 years, and so anything they do is an improvement.
it is a pretty pond. We're targeting, if you know, our DEC process works out, we're targeting to hopefully do the construction in the summer, which is the best time to do it. Should be the least amount of water in the pond. It should be, you know, the driest season. That is the intention, you know. So as soon as we get the permits in place, we're, you know, getting a contractor on board. Several contractors have already walked and viewed the project and has actually helped us with the design process as far as their experience and products that they have seen that work well on similar ponds, similar dams.
Does anybody from the board have any other questions or comments? Okay, so, you know, any way that either Max or the board can be of help, I think this is a very, very good project. And I wanted everybody to know about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good, worthwhile project. It's you know, it's challenging in certain ways, but you know, we envision that when we walk away, it'll be in better condition, and you know, and someone will maintain it going forward, which means they won't allow trees to grow on it, and hopefully, you know, it'll age a little better for the next 100 years. Right?
Yeah, I like photo 6 with the hole in the middle.
Yeah, photo 6, 5, 6. Yeah.
And this is a conservation project that we've actually been working to put together for a few years. And, you know, the conservation buyer, you know, clearly isn't about to kind of accept property that is in this kind of, you know, that requires this kind of level of work and is this amount of risk. So they want to make sure that, you know, the dam is repaired and repaired properly before they take ownership.
Right.
And, you know, commit to stewarding it, you know, going forward. So
we do commend the present owner for his commitment to fixing the dam before it goes into stewardship.
I have a quick
Scott?
Sorry if this is more for my own education, but why don't we need to issue a permit for this?
At the present time, it's dam maintenance. Could it get bigger than that? Possibly. I mean, it's sort of vague in the law. I mean, gets a little bit more than routine dam maintenance, but since the DEC is overseeing it, I think we're fine.
Yeah. And I think the code says maintenance or repair. So
This is a major. This is one of the, I think this is probably the biggest repair that's happened in the town in decades, but it's a good thing.
it is a good thing. And, DEC is pretty diligent.
Well, thank you for coming in and spending the time with us. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'll, keep in touch with Max and let him know what's
We
going
can
on.
be of help. Yep.
All right.
Great.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Cheryl, I guess last but not least, the Garrison Golf Club / Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival.
I'm just gonna start moving them over.
Have we gotten everybody over?
A little bit of a lag, so I'm still moving some people over, but
Okay.
Hollis.
Good evening.
Everybody over, Cheryl? Just let me know.
Not yet. It's a big group.
That's okay.
Okay, I think everyone's over now.
Okay. So we had asked Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival / the Garrison Golf Club to come in so they could talk to us about the project, because we will at a certain point, as an interested agency, being advising the planning board. There have been a bunch of updates to the project. So rather than having a prolonged discussion, I really would like this to be for the applicants to tell us what they're doing, how the project's changed, what they believe are the areas of interest for us, which are environmental and view shed predominantly. And if any of you have some questions, please ask them. I expect that by the next meeting, we will have materials that we can look at. But I don't think it's at this point, since we don't have materials in front of us other than what were given to us October 26, 2021, and we have done site visit, that it's worth or fair to the applicant to go into a long discussion. So it's really more of them to talk to us, right? I hope all the applicants are happy with that.
Well, I'm happy enough, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay.
P. Daniel Hollis from Hollis, Laidlaw and Simon. Pardon me, we're the attorneys for the applicant. When I watched the end of your last meeting, and the chairman spoke about what our purpose would be here today, I understood it more to be a discussion by your board of the application and not so much a presentation by us. However, we have enough of our team here to be able to tell you what's different from October and from your site visit. So if, with your permission and with the help of our team, we'll start in on that. Lainey McKinnon, our landscape architect, if you could share the site plan, Lainey.
If I could get sharing permission, I'd be happy to do that.
That's something we can work out.
There we go.
Thank you, Lainey. And Lainey can, once she gets it up there, show you with her cursor what it is we're talking about.
Sure. So I'll give a brief overview of the changes that have been made since the last time we were in front of you. As an explanation of what's on your screen right now, the plan image on the left-hand side of the screen is the previous plan that we had shared with you. The image on the right is what we're calling the reduced site plan. The numbers in red are items that have been adjusted. So as just a quick overview, item number 6, which I think you will hopefully all be quite pleased with, the pervious parking lot and road have been realigned to be out of the wetland buffer. These plans are a little small, so I apologize, but you can see here this red line is the wetland buffer, and we are outside of that. It's a rendering, so it's not. We have technical drawings coming, but we've moved everything to be out of there. Since we last spoke with you, also, the indoor theater has been removed from the application. The inn accommodations have been removed, and a few of our parking spaces at number 16 here have been reduced based on the use on site will be diminished due to the removal of the theater and the hotel.
So those were removed for phase 1 or 2 or what permanently? I'm just trying to understand what they are.
For the secret application that we've been made.
Okay.
And if I might jump in here, on Thursday, we'll be making a submission to the planning board. We received 13 pages of questions that Ms. Rocket put together in some miraculous fashion, having listened to 8 hours of public hearings on the secret application and countless letters from members of the public. And she distilled that into the 13 pages. When our team was working on that today, our responses to those 13 pages where the questions are melded with the answers was 52 pages. So we will be submitting that to the planning board on Thursday by their direction, and we'd be glad to provide that to you. It's a public record, obviously, but for convenience purposes, Ms. Rocket could provide a copy of that to your board too, Mr. Chairman, because a lot of the questions are questions some of you might have in your own minds, and some of the questions are relevant, some of them kindly put, not so much, but we answered them all anyway.
That would be great if you would share that with us.
Absolutely. So basically, the major and only issue for the wetland permit would appear to be the new bridge off the new Snake Hill Road entrance, and we're still working on that. Pardon me, we don't have the design of that fully doped out yet, but as you know from your site walk, you know where it is, how it's a span bridge, and the wetlands will not be disturbed by virtue of that bridge and its construction.
Could you refresh our memory? I mean, I know we spoke about it in the past, but I'm trying to understand what's the advantage of going off Snake Hill Road as the major exit, as opposed to just going back on 9 where the golf course has the primary, entrance and exit. What was the advantage of moving it to Snake Hill Road?
Well, I wouldn't call it the primary means of ingress and egress. It's an ancillary means of ingress and egress, because the existing road over the dam we didn't feel was appropriate either for sight lines from Route 9 or for the condition of the dam, which we have to deal with at some point in time with a repair with the DEC. That's really the reason. It's not to take the place of Route 9 entrance. It's ancillary, just as the existing Snake Hill Road is. And our traffic consultant's not here with us tonight to explain the ingress and egress and how we'll manage the traffic during when people come and when people leave. The fact that we have done away with the indoor theater and the 20-room hotel will lessen the traffic significantly and the number of people on campus. But so,
okay, I guess maybe I misunderstood. I thought that the purpose of that Snake Hill was going to be the main entrance and exit, but maybe I misunderstood. So
I think you might have. Yes, sir.
I am assuming, Mr. Hollis, that essentially a complex this size requires at least 2 egress points.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's all. Okay. Okay. You want to continue?
No, I mean, that's really the only difference from what you've seen before and what you've seen. And as you said earlier, Mr. Chairman, a site visit is worth 10,000 words, and I can't improve upon your site visit.
Okay. So with that said, then I would be interested preliminarily with some comments from the board, if anybody has any. Everybody's quiet?
I would just be curious. I would just be curious to see if, have there been any considerations with the overall management plan in the open spaces on the property? Have there been any new developments in regards to that in terms of management practices within the wetland setbacks in those open spaces? I know.
You mean any difference from what you spoke with Mr. Johannesson and Ms. McKinnon about in the past, or?
Yeah, it seemed like everything was very preliminary and at a conceptual stage. And I was curious if that had changed.
Lainey, are you aware of any changes?
We are still in that process. Since we're still undergoing our secret determination, we have not furthered the exact management practices yet.
Because that in a certain way is a big deal. And it could be very much in your favor because you are taking somewhat of a brownfield and in areas making it into a meadow. I think in other areas doing some reforestation. So, we would like to know more about that. And I think I think it's in your best interest to develop a more fully fleshed out plan.
We'll certainly have that by the time we come to you for a permit ancillary to the actual need for that permit, for sure. Excuse me, and it'll be incidental to the site plan application as well.
I think another thing that we are concerned about is the placement of the tent, which is while it is not marked on the overlay as a scenic vista, it is in essence a scenic vista. Mm-hmm. So we are certainly interested in that and what is being thought about in terms of mitigating that.
We're working on how best to mitigate the impact of the location of the tent, and that's still a work in progress as well. The general location of it is the same. It's not at the highest point of the ridgeline. It's actually, I think, 30 feet below the highest point of the ridgeline. But we're still working on that with our architectural design team to see what can be done to soften the presence of the tent on the ridge line or near the ridge.
Yes, and we've been working through our view shed studies with our consultant, with the consultant team for the town to look at that impact as part of the secret process. So we have used topography and plantings to help to mitigate any visual impact.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I speak to that as well?
Absolutely.
We spoke about this a little bit when we met in person, actually, on the site and got to walk up to the proposed location for the tent theater, and also when we looked at the 3D model for the tent theater. But I wanted to say in this meeting that as a part of our overall comprehensive planning process for the site with the team, with Lainey McKinnon and the team at Nelsonburg Waltz, we reviewed multiple different options of where the theater could be located, and we were required to use many and consider many different factors, including the sound of cars from Route 9, including mitigating any acoustical impacts from neighbors to the site, making sure that the wedding events that happen in the clubhouse and the theater would not interrupt one another, ensuring safe pedestrian and vehicular access to the site, and safe parking and a place for parking to access the theater. The location of the proposed location for the tent was in no way done capriciously or with any ego in mind, but specifically related to numerous factors that we had to consider to ultimately reach that conclusion. We are committed to that location and are working, as Lainey spoke about, to ensure that there will be any visual impacts will be mitigated through plantings. as well as any acoustical impacts will be mitigated through the design of the building. The EAF Part 3 that we submitted to the planning board also includes an extensive viewshed analysis that Lainey and the team from Nelson Bergwaltz completed from locations across the river and locations throughout the community. And so I would certainly encourage that the Conservation Board review that, and we could also pull that section out and make sure that that is sent to you as well.
That would be great. Do I have some other questions or comments from the board?
In the Snake Hill Road section, that's we met at another meeting. There was some soil remediation that was taking place due to heavy metals and some other things from pesticides and all. So has that kind of analysis been done on these greens here, where you're going to be putting the tent and things like that?
Sure. Mr. Waddell is with us this evening. He's our soil scientist. Paul, are you? I can only see 4 people. I can't.
Yes, I'm on, Dan. Thank you. Yes, thanks for the question. So some preliminary soil sampling and analysis has been performed, including areas proximal to the proposed tent location. At the moment, the soils that exceed the applicable criteria appear to be confined to the former Gulf greens specifically. Additional sampling has been proposed by the applicant, which will be performed to further delineate the areas that would need some kind of mitigative action. And we are prepared to create a soils management plan, which will describe the different means and methods by which soils that exceed the criteria will be managed appropriately. So that's how those issues will be dealt with.
Thanks, Paul.
So local sampling, try and isolate the areas, and then remediate the areas.
Correct.
Do we have any estimate of the size of the areas that might need to be remediated?
Again, based on the preliminary sampling, the areas that may require remediation appear to be limited to green. So I'm not sure where the total acreage of the greens in the development area are, but it's a limited number of greens, and each green is a small fraction of an acre, perhaps 1,000 square feet or something like that.
Okay. Do I have other questions or comments from the board at this point?
Did we settle that entry thing off of Snake Hill? Is that totally settled?
Meaning, is that, have we settled that's the means of ingress and egress we're going with? Yes, sir.
No. Were all the windy turns and hidden turns all considered in that? You come around that wall from where the church is and all off of 9, and then entering also from the windy Snake Hill. Has that all been calculated and considered with the massive amount of traffic?
Yes, sir. The traffic consultant's not on tonight, but I think Glenn Watson is. And that location has the best sight lines of any location along that stretch to provide the means of ingress and egress.
Yes, in fact, it was the curves that, and the churchyard and the walls at Route 9 that really started us looking at changing the Snake Hill Road entry, because we just didn't have adequate sight distance there. That, coupled with the width of the road over the dam and other issues with the dam, made it very evident that it needed to be relocated. We picked a site on Snake Hill Road for the new intersection, of the entry drive with Snake Hill Road, at a point which optimizes the distance each way for all of the site distances. If we move one way or the other from that position, one gets worse. One may get better, but the other will get worse. And we have adequate site distances. We got fortunate in that it is in between two driveways that are about 100 and 200 feet apart. I'm going to say I submitted the dimensional sketch of it, but so we're splitting between two driveways. So it was a major element of the location had to do with the curvature of the road and the site distances.
And not having it directly across from someone's driveway.
Correct. So, right. So that to be perfectly frank, to be perfectly honest about it, we got lucky on that one. That's where we hit the right spot. That worked out. But our major concern was that we picked this place where we'd have the safest entry onto Snake Hill Road.
Other questions or comments, please? So I guess what we would like to see from you is basically a revised summary that you had provided for us in April. And I think that the areas of interest are, and some of it's probably a work in progress in terms of the management plan for open spaces and if there's any thought on the forested areas. I'm assuming you're telling us that all the work now, with the exception of the bridge off of Snake Hill Road, and correct me if I'm wrong, are outside of the wetland buffers.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay. So if there's been any changes in what's being proposed for the bridge, we'd like to know about that. If it ends up being the same materials rather than reprinting it, I think you can just tell us to refer to that.
I don't anticipate a change with the bridge, sir.
Right. And I know, again, it's a work in progress, but we'd like to know as much as we can about remediation of soils and where they might either be near a wetland buffer, or, and Max, you can weigh in on this, where because of the drainage on the property, because we're not dealing with a forested area, we're dealing with lawns and a manicured area where that might be a problem with hitting a buffer or a stream.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And lastly, sorry, Lou, just let me finish and then I'll have you jump in. And then lastly, we did want to see the revised basically scenic vista analysis.
Let's not revise. That's the same plan we've submitted as part 3 of the secret documents.
So it
it's
has not
comprehensive.
changed.
No.
Okay.
But there's
somebody was
additional.
talking about some mitigation being done.
Correct. There's some screening that is going to be added. Ms. McKinnon can talk to that. We can fill in the blanks on that for you.
So you could provide us with materials on that, or do you want? You could
By
also
materials,
talk
Provide
about-
you the extract from the EAF documents showing the view set analysis. For sure. It's in the document, so we can just pull those out and share them with you.
And that analysis, I think there's a couple of things that you should look for in there, in that there's plantings that have been specifically, they're sample plantings as of this stage. They're not final, but they're plantings that show trees, et cetera, that are going to mitigate those impacts from the visual from Route 9. The one thing that has not been brought out is the original plans right from the beginning contain a berm, basically a building up of earth on the Snake Hill Road side of the tent that will further block its view from people going by on Snake Hill Road.
I think the biggest concern that the board has in terms of visual disturbances, while yes, Route 9 and Snake Hill are in our thought process, is I guess that's the 17th green, or I'm not sure the number, but that's what I'm going to call it at the moment. It is perhaps one of the most significant viewpoints in the Hudson Highlands. I would say the second most significant would be over the bandstand at West Point. And we've mentioned this before. So, you know, the analysis I looked at didn't really seem to focus on that totally. And I think that's where, you know, the board is a little bit uncomfortable with that, you know, that because that's really the major viewpoint versus looking at it from, not that I'm discounting Route 9 or Snake Hill Road.
Where are you looking at it from, though? From the other side of the river?
It could be from the other side of the river, without a doubt. It could be from different parklands that are higher up in the Hudson Highland parks on this side of the river as well.
We'll provide
Chairman,
you the
we can
report.
also, yeah, we can share the viewshed studies also account for the predetermined locations as agreed to with the town planning board from across the river. So we can share those also when we share the viewshed studies from the more site immediate surrounding areas.
And
We've done
those
both.
were locations, as Ms. McKinnon just mentioned, that were directed for us to analyze by AKRF.
Okay, that would be great. Lou, were you about to say something before I cut you off?
Wow. Oh, what are you talking about? The excess soil and such, where that's going to end up, or how they're going to deal with that when they dig out all this areas? Is that what it was?
I didn't hear that question, but Paul or Glenn, do you have an answer for that?
Well, I would only say that soils that are excess and that cannot be utilized as kind of a cut fill that exceed the criteria that we're using in terms of the quality of the soil or the constituents contained therein would be, you know, managed with appropriate offsite disposal.
I think that what we've submitted to the planning board with regard to the SECRA analysis, which has been as comprehensive, I'm led to believe, as any that has ever been undertaken within the town of Philipstown, and their analysis of all the environmental impacts that are within their jurisdiction and in the jurisdiction of others, I think they have a very good handle on the analysis of those impacts, and they put us to the test of answering as to how we are eliminating or mitigating those. And I believe with good luck and good hope that we'll have a negative declaration that will prove that we have satisfied all those issues. And then we move on to site plan, you know, and the different boards and commissions have different roles in that process after we get through SECRA. But SECRA is, you know, it's unclear exactly when we'll finish that, but hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll have a determination one way or the other. Hopefully negative declaration.
Okay, anybody else have any comments, questions?
For the tent, I mean, I know, and this might be a crazy idea, but I know in the past we've talked about, you know, with the windmills and things like that, we put balloons up to try and get an idea of what it would look like. Would that make any sense in a situation like this for the tent, to show what the height of the tent would look like from various positions and get pictures with a balloon?
I think the planning board could require that as part of the site plan process, if I had to bet. As part, that's that would be part of their concern perhaps at that time. That hasn't been required as of yet, but it certainly is well within the range of possibilities as we go through the site plan process.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Remind me what the peak height of the tent is?
It'll be compliant with the zoning ordinance, 40 feet.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Well, we greatly appreciate you spending the time with us.
Well, thank you.
And if you could get us the additional materials and what is still staying the same, just please let us know. So we're not cross-referencing two binders.
And can we come back after we've reached a couple of other benchmarks in order
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
we'd rather see you come back more often. We don't want to be an impediment to the process whatsoever, but we want to make sure what is being done is best for the town and the environment. And in certain ways, we might be able to help you. In certain ways, maybe we can't. You know, I mean, it's one of the biggest projects that's ever been done in Philipstown. And I know that developers always hate to see a positive declaration, but quite frankly, a positive declaration might be the best thing that ever happened to you, because I do think there's probably a lot of good things that are happening that are not being seen.
I don't think I agree with you on that, because
So-
we have the level of studies that we have done. I think we're a little outside of our lane here, but not us, but I think the board might be, because the amount of studies that have gone into the EAF Part 3 are equal to or exceed the reports and studies I've seen in EISs, and I've seen plenty of them in nearly 50 years of doing this. They're as comprehensive and well thought out and responsible as any of I've seen. So I don't think an EIS is not your friend for any project necessarily, if you've done all the proper explanation of the environmental impacts, and we have. So I respectfully disagree with the chairman.
Okay, that's your opinion. My
Well,
opinion
it's
is it would probably show improvements to a brownfield, great improvements. So,
well, I don't think it's a brownfield. It's not identified as such, and it's not my opinion that I quoted. It's the law, actually. So,
okay, we have anything else from the board or Max? Okay, so we're going to thank you for coming in. I do see an attendee has their hand up, but in this type of discussion, I'm sorry, we don't look for public input. If you would like to send the Conservation Board a letter, an email, or with now the YouTube generation, you could send us a video too. We will certainly take it into consideration.
We've never had a video, have we?
No, we haven't, but I've been moderating a bunch of advisory boards, and all of a sudden the younger ones are saying, I'd rather give you a video, and I'm fine. So
I only bring it up because we're being asked to do videos at work, and I'm kind of resistant to that. So.
Good thing, but, you know, I'm trained as a filmmaker, so what can I say? Anyway, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Okay, so the few things we have left, I'm not sure what we have under stormwater, or if Max has anything he'd like to let us know about.
No, nothing new on stormwater. I'll be preparing the annual report, the MS4 report, for the town board in the next coming months. So I'll be working on that, but no other real new updates on the wetlands side of things.
Okay, good. So then I guess the only other two items are approval of the December minutes. Has everybody looked at them? So, I mean, do we have enough people that have looked at them that we could approve the minutes? Yeah, I went through them and made some minor corrections. I thought they were very well done.
I've looked at them.
So
I don't know if you have enough people, because I'm not sure exactly how it works, but Crystal was absent, so she probably
so
can't.
she's absent. Okay, so
Not with
it's
us
just
yet.
myself, Jan, MJ's not here. Bob, have you looked yet? So, yep, I guess we're gonna have to do this next meeting. We're shy one.
Sorry, January, I realized just yesterday with my cut and paste that I did not have Scott in there for the votes and the attendance. I did update that.
Okay.
That was a mistake.
Could you send me it electronically? Because I went through it. That's a long set of minutes.
Yeah, that was
I have
one
a
of
few
the
very
ones.
minor corrections.
Sure.
Was I there in January?
I think that was your first meeting, wasn't it?
I thought this was my third meeting, which means April, March.
It might be February, March. Yeah, I'm not sure Scott was
Okay,
there.
so I was right the first time. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'd rather that you were wrong than I was.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Okay, if everybody could look at the December meeting, the December minutes and the January minutes, it would be great to get those approved next month. And with that, thank you, everybody. And I guess it's happy Easter, Passover, and whatever else is happening this time of year.
Spring.
It's getting
Happy
warm.
spring.
Thank you. So
Happy spring too.
now I need somebody to make a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
Don't move.
All in the second.
I
Okay.
second it.
And before I say all in favor, I believe this is the first time we've gotten Lou on the meeting virtually. That is a
Yeah,
great
right.
occasion and honor. Thank you, Lou.
Wow. Big deal.
Absolutely. Well done,
Big
Lou.
deal.
Well done.
Yeah,
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
would make more trouble if I was in person, so that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, we have a first and a second. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care. Take care.